If you're thinking of buying property in London or in the UK, well, make sure to check out this video where I'll be highlighting 5 ways that the property market here is probably unlike anything you've experienced in your country. Number 1, using a buying agent. If, say, you're in America, you would be very used to hiring a buying agent who works just for you and has a duty of care to support you with your purchase. They will be by your side and get you in to see every property that may be of interest. They'll also negotiate on your behalf and assist you in writing the contract, which is presented and negotiated with the sales agent who represents the seller. The seller will only have listed with one agent at a time, usually for a period of 6 months or up to a year, and they'll pay a sales commission that's split between the sales agent and the buying agent, typically between 5 and 7.5%. In the UK, the market is dominated by estate agents who work solely on behalf of the seller, who are often called the vendor. The seller will typically pay 1.5% to 2% commission for a sole agency, but might actually decide to hire several agents, and in this multiple agency scenario, the fee could be around 3%, but it's still a winner-take-all. You then, as a buyer, must register with each specific agent who has listed a property that you may be interested in seeing, and that agent can only show you the stock that they have. This can be extremely inefficient, as busy professionals and foreign buyers must deal with many different agents and arrange viewings at different times, often based on the agent's schedule, less so than yours. In the States, your buying agent will typically go out with you and be your consultant and fiduciary every step of the way. There are often lock boxes on many properties, so access with your agent is direct and straightforward, and you can book really a nice set of viewings in an efficient time frame. This is one of the things that surprised me most as a real estate professional when I moved to London, that people were buying the most expensive asset of their life with no one guiding or supporting them. Instead, they must rely on an estate agent that really works for the seller. It's one of the reasons that I specialize in working as a buying agent to support international buyers along with domestic buyers, whether it's first-time buyers or working professionals. Number 2 on our list of ways that the London and UK market are so different is the concept of leasehold versus freehold. This is something that many international buyers definitely won't be familiar with. In the US, the closest thing might be perhaps to buying into a condo building. Here in the UK, leasehold and freehold are different types of ownership structures. In London, we see a lot of leasehold properties given the number of flats and apartments versus single-family homes. In a freehold, you own the land as well as the building. So if you own a single-family home, you would own the freehold. But in buildings or structures where there are multiple flats or apartments, or say a converted house with several flats, you're more likely to be buying a leasehold, which means you own your unit but don't own the underlying land. In this case, there might be common areas that you're going to share, whether it's the lobby where you come into the property, or the roof, or the front steps, or the exterior of the building. You're sharing that with the other property leaseholders, and the freeholder owns the building and the land it sits on. So as a leaseholder, you're going to have a lease which has an underlying term in which you have rights to that unit. Typically, new leases range from 125 years to up to 999 years, but as time passes and the term of the lease reduces, when a lease starts getting below, say, 80 years, a lot of banks or mortgage lenders won't lend against that property. So it's something that as a buyer, you want to make sure you understand. If it is a leasehold, what is the remaining lease term that exists? The other key element of being a leaseholder is that you're going to be responsible to pay service charges. Service charges are the shared cost of maintaining the building, and so will cover things like building insurance, communal area maintenance, and amenities of the building like concierge, gym, pool, cinema, etc. While there may or may not be a management company, as leaseholders, you will share the cost with other leaseholders. As a buying agent, it's definitely something we make sure our buyers understand and budget for. Number 3 on our list is stamp duty. In essence, stamp duty is a tax on purchase of the property. Again, it's not a concept that many foreign buyers would be used to, especially if you're coming over from America. While stamp duty can be a significant addition to your purchasing budget, it isn't something that you can roll up into a mortgage, so you're definitely going to have to pay for it outright and make sure you've budgeted for it. A little bit of history. Stamp duty actually started back in the 1950s, but back then it was as low as 1% on property values of over $30,000. But since most properties were valued over $20,000, most people didn't pay stamp duty. As time evolved, the government has increased stamp duty considerably over the years as it recognized the amount of tax revenue it could generate. In December 2016, the government instituted a new tiered system for stamp duty, which meant that you're charged on the value that went over a certain threshold. As reflected in this chart, the highest tier is 12% for amounts over 1.5 million. However, there are additional 3% surcharges at each level if it is not your first property, say as a buy-to-let investor, or if you're purchasing a company structure, or as a foreign buyer. So if you are a foreign buyer, you will want to budget accordingly and make sure you have sufficient funds to cover this aspect of your purchase. Number 4 is the conveyance process. In the States, once a buyer wants to make an offer on a particular property in consultation with their buying agent, they write an offer including price and any terms such as subject to home inspection, appraisal, or financing being attained. The buying agent then presents the offer to the sales agent and negotiations commence until price and terms are agreed. At that point, a legally binding contract is signed and a buyer has to put an amount into escrow, typically around $10,000. Next, appraisals, inspections are conducted as per the contract. If any issues are found, the buyer might decide not to proceed or can try to renegotiate based on the items identified, or just decide to proceed with the deal as agreed. In the UK, the typical process is that a buyer makes an offer directly to the estate agent who represents the seller. Any negotiations are between that buyer and the sales agent. Once the offer is accepted, both parties engage solicitors and a sales memorandum is presented summarizing the details. If you have a mortgage, a bank requested valuation is booked, and then the buyer can opt to have a survey done, and there are several types, and this will be similar to an American home inspection, which is actually looking at the structure and the property and making sure it's sound. Under the UK process, during this period, either party can walk away as this agreed sale is not legally binding. So that leads to my 5th and the most important difference on what makes the UK market, purchasing in the UK property market, so unique. And that is 5, exchange and completion. During the closing process, this is where the biggest difference between the UK and many other countries exists. In the UK, until you exchange contracts, which can be weeks or months later, either party can walk away without recourse or penalty. During this due diligence or conveyance phase prior to exchange of contracts, that is when solicitors, particularly the buyer solicitor, engages in searches, surveys, and valuations are conducted and financing underwriting occurs. Again, remember that during this period, either party can change their mind and decide not to proceed. For example, a seller can accept a higher offer, and that's what we call being gazumped, or a buyer can simply decide not to proceed. This leaves both parties highly exposed throughout this time. It's only at exchange of contracts that both parties are now legally bound, and the buyer will put up a deposit of 10% of the purchase price and a completion date is set. Usually that's a couple of weeks later, although sometimes exchange and completion can happen simultaneously. Between exchange and completion, the bank has been notified to complete final steps on the mortgage and arrange for the funds to be available on completion day. At completion, the solicitors will arrange for the remaining monies to be paid and the keys exchanged. In America, the legal work and transfer of ownership is handled by a single attorney or title company appointed by the buyer. At closing, all documentation is signed, including loan documents and bank funds. Within a few days after funds have cleared, keys are then released. Also, it can be done at closing if a cashier's check has been presented. So I hope this video has been helpful in giving you a sense of the buying process here in London and the key elements that you need to factor, even if you're a seasoned investor and you've purchased elsewhere. Please make sure to leave me a comment below about what surprised you most about the differences and hit that like button. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out my other videos on my YouTube channel where I share great tips and information about the London property market and living in this fabulous city. So that's Ugo Arenze with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. Bye for now.